days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm going to talk about players that need to play down the stretch. And it's been a tough week. For me in particular, I've been ill. So if you haven't seen me around, that's part of the reason. I hope everyone enjoyed their holiday season and they're having a good time as we push towards a new year. And for the 49ers, there's still decisions to be made with this roster moving forward in 2025. John Lynch goes on KNBR. And he said, hey, we're trying to get to the root issues of what happened this season, but we are going to fix it. And I think part of going into what you have to do in 2025 is determining what you've got on the roster when it comes to young players or decisions on key free agents. And that's what the mindset of the 49ers has to be over the next two games. Now, we know that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are going to want to put out a competitive product, especially on Monday night versus the Detroit Lions. It was just a year ago, a little over a year ago, that they were playing the Detroit Lions in the NFC Championship game. That, of course, is not in the cards. But for the 49ers, this is still an opportunity to go out in front of a very big audience, a national audience, and show that they're still a good football team, that they're not as bad as what their record was. Now, this has not been a good season for the 49ers by any stretch of the imagination, and there needs to be changes next season. But who exactly is going to be a part of this roster and somewhat be determined over the next few weeks as the 49ers look for opportunities to take a harder look at some key players, whether that's rookies or additions that they had in free agency, or potentially veterans that they wanted to decide if they're going to bring back or move off of. Now, for some, there's not going to be an opportunity. A guy like Dre Greenlaw, it would have been great to be able to evaluate him over the next 2 weeks, see how exactly he came back from that Achilles injury. But we know he's been shut down for the year. The calf injury, just too much for them to risk his well-being and his health. And so they're going to have to go off the limited amount of snaps that they had for him over the last 2 weeks that he played. That's a tough decision for them to make. They know how much they want Dre Greenlaw. They know how important he is to this defense. But you didn't really get to evaluate him for the full amount of time you wanted to evaluate him. You wanted to see him get back to being Dre Greenlaw. Now, I would say he did a pretty darn good job, and I think every single person really wants to see him come back. What that money looks like, I think, is going to be interesting. But getting guys like that back is going to be key, all the while figuring out what you're going to be paying Brock Purdy, because that is going to be the point of emphasis going into free agency, is getting Brock Purdy's contract locked up so you know what kind of money you can spend on other players. And some of these key players I'm going to talk about in this episode could make it a lot easier for the 49ers to be able to move on from some of those veteran players if some of these young guys can step up. But they've got to get an opportunity. We're going to talk about who needs an opportunity down the stretch to get some opportunity to prove that they belong, to prove that they can make an impact in 2025. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. It goes a long way, and I really appreciate it. And if you're going to bet with Bet Online. Bet Online continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, Bet Online provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, and college basketball to NHL and UFC, head to Bet Online today, and don't forget to use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, the game starts here. So when I was looking at who needed to be able to play and the players that needed to have an opportunity down the stretch, I kind of put it in a couple of categories. I talked about key veterans that potentially you need to see get more reps so you can make a decision on them. Rookies who maybe haven't got an opportunity to prove or have showed flashes, but you want to see more. But also some guys who are maybe second and third year players that you're going to have to make decisions on As far as draft picks, do we go ahead and spend draft capital to replace you? You didn't work out. And then, of course, there's the players that just need to be featured a little bit more. And that's actually where I'm going to start, with a player that needs to be featured a little bit more over the next couple of weeks. And that is the 49ers first round pick, Ricky Pearsall. In last week's game, Pearsall got featured early. They got him some opportunities with screens. They looked for him on slants, and they got Pearsall the ball a little bit more than they had in the previous several weeks. But they need to make this a point of emphasis. We know who Juwan Jennings is. We know who Deebo Samuel is. But we're trying to get Ricky Pearsall to be a big part of this 49ers offense. And really, he needs to be worked in so that way when he comes in next year, it's a little bit easier and the maturation process is further along. And that's exactly what they've got to do over these next couple weeks. They're going to have an opportunity against Detroit, who has some injuries in the secondary. Opportunities for Ricky Pearsall to get some matchups in his favor against another young guy like Terrion Arnold. What could he go out there and prove in that game? And I think this is going to be a key element for the 49ers in the next 2 weeks. Getting number 14 the football in space and seeing what he can do. Finding out how well he's going to block. Finding out how good he's going to be able to win against man coverage. I think all these things are going to be very important. So Ricky Pearsall's effectiveness is going to be important. And now the 49ers playoff hopes are dashed officially. Yes, you still want to get Deebo the ball. You still want to run through Juwan, because the truth is Brock Purdy's going to be out there. 49ers want to be competitive. They don't want to go out there and get embarrassed on Monday Night Football. They want to put forth a good showing. So you're not exactly going to force feed Ricky Pearsall just to force feed him. You want it to work within the offense, and you still want to get the ball to Deebo and Juwan, but you just want to make a little bit more of a point of emphasis to get the ball to Ricky Pearsall. Make him the number one in some of your concepts. Get him some key matchups that work. Get him in motion. Get him on a jet sweep. Get him on a reverse. Hit him with the screen. Let's find out exactly what this guy can do in the open space, and let's give him something to build off of. Let's build a platform for him to be able to jumpstart off of next year. So when he comes into training camp, you have a full idea of what his skill set is, and not only has he proved it in practice, but he's proved it in the game. And this has been something that's been talked about a lot. But Pearsall did not have a lot of practice time. I've seen him at training camp. He practiced a handful of times. How many of those were full speed practices? Not very many. Then he comes back after being shot and, of course, didn't get a lot of practices then. 3 full practices. Then after that, your team's so beat up, there's basically no full speed practices after that. So it would be good to see Pearsall get some full speed practices in these games. That's about the best that he's going to be able to do. And let's design some plays to get him the football. And let's care and make it a point of an emphasis to get him the ball. Now, another guy that we got to see play is Jacob Cowing. And I understand completely where Kyle Shanahan has been with Pearsall and Jacob Cowing, and especially Cowing, because Cowing has struggled to block and Cowing has struggled to line up correctly. Pearsall struggled with the same thing. We've seen that rear its ugly head last week with Pearsall getting 2 penalties for lining up at the wrong spot, illegal procedure, not covering a tackle when he was supposed to, another time covering an eligible receiver. Those are things you just can't have happen. You have to be aware of your surroundings, and Jacob Cowing has done the same thing. In fact, Ricky Pearsall had a big jet sweep run this season that was supposed to be for Jacob Cowing, but Cowing lined up wrong. So Ricky Pearsall and Chris Conley called an audible themselves, and Pearsall got the ball around the edge, and it worked. And so those are the kind of frustrating things we've seen. But what we know is Jacob Cowing in preseason showed he has the ability to find space and get open, has the ability to stretch a defense vertically, and could be a key contributor to the 49ers in 2025 with his speed element. This is something the 49ers have been trying to get over and over since 2017. Marquise Goodwin, speed element. Danny Gray, speed element. None of them have worked out. Is Jacob Cowing going to be the guy that finally works out and is able to be a vertical threat down the field and open up things underneath? That is going to be a key element. Can he run quick screens and win in space? Can he get some of those jet sweeps and reverses and create another dynamic opportunity for himself and for this football team? It's going to be interesting, but we've got to see him now get involved. I think Kyle Shanahan is going to be more willing, never want to as a coach, but more willing to take a penalty here or there or to get a missed block just to evaluate where Jacob Cowing is to see who he could be, because they need to go ahead and find a way to get him a couple of targets per game and give him an opportunity to go out there and win and see what you got with the young guy. So Pearsall needs to be featured more. Jacob Cowing just needs to be featured a little bit. They need to get him a couple opportunities here or there, get him a quick screen, get him a jet sweep, and get him a vertical pass down the field or an opportunity for a vertical pass down the field. But just get him out on the field more so he gets more confident, more comfortable. So the same way that you're building a platform with Ricky Pearsall, you can build one for Jacob Cowing as well. As long as you can build that, then he can build the next level during the offseason. And these guys will have a better understanding of the requirements for their body, how healthy they're supposed to stay, but also what exactly this offense entails that they need to get better at. So this is going to be a key thing, getting Pearsall and Jacob Cowing more involved. Now, another one for me is Israel Abanikanda, who they picked up off waivers. And we have yet to see Abanikanda make his 49ers debut, which is not very surprising considering he has to make sure he can know the offense. Kyle's very particular about protections and making sure that he keeps quarterback Brock Purdy upright and healthy, which could be a point of emphasis for everyone. But evaluating who Abanikanda is a key, because you're going to have decisions to make at running back. We know Christian McCaffrey's not going anywhere. He will be with the 49ers next year, hopefully healthy and ready to go. Nothing like we had this season. But then you've got Elijah Mitchell, who went on the IR before the season. He had a hamstring injury. He's going to be a free agent. They need to decide on him. They need to decide on Jordan Mason. Jordan Mason is going to be a restricted free agent. And if you offer him a decent contract and he doesn't take it, then you might have to put a tender on him. And if you put a tender, likely it's going to be a second round tender. It's going to cost you over $4 million a year. Can you afford to pay Jordan Mason $4 million a year? Well, you might have to if you don't have another guy ready to step up. Now, we know Isaac Guerrero has shown flashes, and I think he is the eventual backup right now for Christian McCaffrey next season. But you have Israel Abanikanda under contract for a little while. You can make a determination on who he is, a former fifth-round pick. He's got the ability to play in this offense, and there's a lot to like. 4.4 speed. He's a one-cut-and-go guy. Got some ability to break tackles. He always falls forward with a forward lean. But we got to see it in the 49ers offense. And I think over the next 2 weeks would be a good opportunity to get him the football. Isaac Guerrero's been dealing with an injury. It does look like he's going to play. He's trending the right direction. That's good news. But instead of going with Patrick Taylor, who's the veteran who understands everything, let's go with the young guy, Israel Abanikanda. Get him some carries and let him go out there and prove that he can compete on this running back room next year. Then you could go into the season if he proved that he could run the ball within this offense. You go in next year with Christian McCaffrey, with Israel Abanikanda, and with Isaac Guerrero being ahead of Abanikanda, of course. But then you have three guys, and two of those guys are young players. Abanikanda is still 22 years old, so young players that the 49ers can continue to develop. Then you make a decision on Jordan Mason and Elijah Mitchell, and you're feeling a lot more comfortable about your running back room, that once again the depth was tested in a big way this season. So Abanikanda, getting him the football, just getting him a few carries, getting him involved, seeing what he can do could be very huge for the 49ers. And I think that that's going to be a key. He's going to be a key player. Now, a guy that's going to get a lot of attention, and he's going to be out there playing because of the injuries on the offensive line, especially now that it's trending towards Spencer Burford might not be playing, Colt McKivitz might not be playing. Those things are trending the wrong direction. But Nick Zakelj is going to be starting at left guard, it appears. And Zakelj has been a guy that was very well thought of coming out of the draft a couple years ago. And he kind of fell off and never really did anything. But this offseason, he looked really good. He had a really good training camp. He had a really good preseason. And he made this 49ers 53-man roster. And now he's going to have an opportunity. I think his best position is center. That's what he did the best at during the preseason. But he's going to be playing left guard in place of Aaron Banks. Of course, Ben Barch is hurt. Spencer Burford's hurt. And Burford would have been playing tackle. So Zakel's going to get his look. And I know he has to play, so he's going to be out there. But this is going to be a very important evaluation for Nick Zakelj. Now, one thing, if I was the 49ers, and I know you don't want to get Brock Purdy killed, you don't want to get him hurt for any reason, but if I was the 49ers, I would find a way, whether that is in the fourth quarter, maybe the game is, if the game gets out of hand, that you pull Jake Brendel or you move him to left guard and you allow Nick Sakel to play center for some snaps this season. I think it's important to get him out there and see what he can do. You have a decision to make at center next year. Everyone knows you need to upgrade the position. Is it Nick Sakel? I don't know. I don't know if I could say that, but I would love to see him go against some top NFL talent over the next 2 weeks and just see how he does handling that position. A good time to evaluate who you got at Nick Sakel, so at least you have a steady backup next season if you go out and you draft someone or you sign someone free agency. So Sakel will be playing left guard. I would love to see, and I think the 49ers should play him at least 1 quarter per game in the next 2 games at center in place of Jake Brendel and take a good evaluation. This is a great evaluation time for the San Francisco 49ers if they handle it right. And I love to see Nick Sakel get evaluated, so at least they know how they're looking with depth. Spencer Burford coming back next year, depth on the offensive line. Could be Nick Sakel as well. Both of them drafted in the same draft in the 4th and 6th round, respectively. So decisions to be made along the offensive line, it gets a lot easier if you go out there and you're able to evaluate these guys. Now, I'm going to flip over to defense a little bit, and I think that there's a lot of guys on defense. And one of the guys that I think the 49ers have to evaluate over the next few weeks is Darrell Luter Jr. And maybe they've already made a decision on Darrell Luter Jr. I'm not sure. We know that he had some special teams gaffes, but really we haven't seen him on the field playing as a cornerback. And they made decisions this season. They moved on from Samuel Womack. They moved on from Ambry Thomas. And now they've got to make a decision on Darrell Luter Jr. He's going to be going into year 3 next year. Who exactly is he? Is he the one that everyone should have promise about that could step in with that great length, that physicality, and be able to play on the outside? Is he the Isaac Yedem for next year? Are you comfortable with De'Amar Lenore and with Renardo Green, and then with a guy like Darrell Luter Jr. stepping in on the outside when Lenore goes inside? Those are the types of things they need to evaluate. And maybe they've already made a decision. They don't know he's that guy, or they don't think he's that guy, and they can go ahead and draft cornerbacks to take over and take that spot. But you have key veteran free agents that you're going to have to make decisions on. Isaac Yedem, you have Rock Yassin, you have other guys at the cornerback position, a guy like Nick McLeod that you just brought in, still a young player that you have to make a decision on. And one of the easiest ways to do it is to see if your young guy you have under contract who's really cheap can step in, but he has to have opportunity to play. And I'm not telling the 49ers to go ahead and not play Charvarius Ward during these football games, or to not play De'Amar Lenore, because that definitely doesn't make sense. But go ahead and get a series or two. Find a series in the beginning of the second quarter for Darrell Luter Jr. to go in there and take some snaps on the outside. If he struggles, get him out. But really evaluate who he is over the next 2 weeks. Some of it against Detroit, where there's going to be tough matchups. Those, you don't want to give up big plays, but you got to evaluate your players. And then against Arizona as well. So Darrell Luter Jr., they need to figure out who he is in the next 2 weeks. I'm sure a lot of the practice film, they've got a really good idea, but going ahead and seeing what he can do could be important. D. Winters. Winters is now going to be the starting linebacker next to Fred Warner, and that's exactly what needs to happen. With no Dre Greenlaw, with everything that happened with Devondre Campbell, they need to have D. Winters be that standalone guy next to Fred. I don't want to see, no offense, I don't want to see DFF. It needs to be D. Winters. It is time to get a big evaluation of him. 50 snaps for him playing in both base sets and in nickel is the key. Who is D. Winters? Can he make plays? And be super aggressive with how you use him. Use his skill set to the best of your ability. We've already seen him be sticky in coverage. We've seen him make some plays. But this is time. This is full tilt time. Evaluation of D. Winters over the next 2 weeks is very important. Let him play that will linebacker. Let him play in all situations. I think it's very, very important for him to be able to go out there and get those playing time. Now, one of his counterparts coming back from injury is Tatum Bethune. and it is 100% important for Tatum Bethune to be out there playing. And like, once again, I get it. DFF has been around for a long time. He's a guy that the 49ers feel comfortable with. I was very happy with him stepping in, playing, even though he's been banged up when a guy quit on his football team. So I have a lot of respect for DFF and what he does. But right now is not the time for DFF to get those snaps. D. Winters getting Will snaps and Tatum Bethune getting Sam linebacker snaps. When you go to base sets, let's get him in there and let's see what he can do, because Tatum Bethune is somebody you want to evaluate down the stretch, and he's looked pretty good when he's got opportunities. We all know what his strength is. His strength is in stopping the run. His weakness is in the pass. Well, guess what? He's a perfect Sam linebacker, and I think the 49ers know they need to evaluate him. So it's very important for Fred to play alongside D. Winters and Tatum Bethune, as you have to make decisions next year on a guy like Drake Greenlaw. And you have to make decisions. Do we need to bring someone in to play Sam linebacker, or do we have that guy in the room? Does D. Winters have the ability to play Will at a high enough level that we can move on from Drake Greenlaw? Right now, I would say no. I haven't seen it from D. I've seen some good things, but I haven't seen that guy that's ready to step in and be a Drake Greenlaw type of impact player. So right now, that's a good evaluation for D. We need an evaluation for Tatum Bethune. And after that, I don't think it's like imperative that we play some of the other guys. Like, I don't think we have to see Jalen Graham. The 49ers have saw enough of Jalen Graham that they made a decision to cut him off the 53-man roster at the beginning of the season. So I don't think Graham figures into the long-term plans of the 49ers. I do think they'd like to have him in the building because he's a nice replacement. He's a sub. He's a really good special teams guy. So some just decisions for the 49ers when it comes to linebacker. But Winters and Bethune, it's important for them to play. For Bethune, he's got to play probably 18 to 20 snaps, especially when teams put the 49ers in base. He needs to be out there. I think it was important to see how he could stop the run. Now, here comes a veteran player, and I haven't had a lot of veterans in the list. In fact, it's been pretty much all young guys. But Talanoa Hufanga, and I mentioned Drake Greenlaw earlier, is I still want to see Hufanga, because Hufanga has done a really good job. And I know he missed some tackles last week, and he has a tendency to do that. He also has a club on one hand that could play a part into why he misses tackles. But his impact on the game has definitely been felt. And I think we felt it a little bit when he came back. When him and Dre were back, you saw the 49ers defense play at a different level. So I think the 49ers need to get Talanoa Hufanga out there. With that being said, I don't think he should play all the snaps. I think there's other players to evaluate as well, because I think the 49ers also need to evaluate Jair Brown. And Brown's dealing with a little bit of an injury. We'll see. He's limited in practice. I do expect him to play. But you've got to decide during the offseason, can we roll with Malik Mustafa and Jair Brown next season the way we did early on in this year? Or do we need to sign Talanoa Hufanga to a extension? I would argue as of right now, you need to sign Talanoa Hufanga to an extension, and you need to make sure you have at least Hufanga and Malik playing together. That's your best safety room, and I think it's been proven. But let's see how Jair Brown responds. I think in this case, you're going to give more of the snaps to Hufanga, but I do want to see series where we get Jair Brown out there. Let's see if he can tackle a little better, take better angles, be better in coverage, not be so flat-footed or play on his heels. I think it's important for the 49ers to evaluate number 27 over the next several weeks, so next couple weeks, and see exactly who he is on the field. See if he can respond, because his play that he put on film for the most part this season wasn't very good. It was very erratic. It was inconsistent at best. And I think that they need to see who exactly he is, because they've got to make a decision. Terrell Luter Jr. going to year 3, Jair Brown going into year 3. Do the 49ers need to sign Hufanga and then draft another safety? That's the decision they need to make. We've seen them have to move on from cornerbacks before. Could they have to move on from a safety with Jair Brown? Not to say that he wouldn't be a part of the 2025 roster, because I think he is. I think he could be a depth piece, but maybe he's safety 4. And that's something that they have to decide between Hufanga and Jair Brown. Now, moving to the defensive line, I think they've seen a lot of Evan Anderson. I think Evan Anderson should continue to be main part of the rotation. I think he's done a pretty good job, and I think the 49ers are excited about what he could be in the future. because when you look at what he was in training camp compared to what he is now, there's been a vast improvement. He's definitely trending in the right direction, so that's good news. Evan Anderson seems to be a hit when it comes to undrafted free agents. The 49ers get one there, kind of sticking in line with some of the other ones they've had. Well, guys like Kevin Givens that have been able to step in and make plays. That was a undrafted free agent. So you've got a guy I think you like in Evan Anderson, but Kalia Davis is another one you just have to evaluate because Davis got injured during the preseason, and when he was coming back, there was a lot of thought that this guy was going to come in and be a game wrecker. We haven't seen that, but we also haven't seen the 49ers play him a lot of snaps. During their stretch run, they were playing a lot more snaps for Malik Collins, who's just been fantastic this season. I think everyone's a fan of Malik Collins. And then also Jordan Elliott. I think they've evaluated Jordan Elliott pretty extensively, that it might be time to get Kalia Davis an extra 5-6 snaps a game. Right now, he gets between 13 and 15. Let's get him up over 20. Evaluate him in pass rush. Evaluate him against the run. Just see if we can get a little bit more playing time out of Kalia Davis. I think that could be very important so they can decide what they want to do depth-wise. A guy like Kevin Givens, going to be a free agent. You're going to have a decision to make with Javon Hargrave. Are you going to bring him back? You got him on a cheaper salary, or is he going to be a post-June 1 cut? 49ers could at least decide on some of their depth players along the defensive line. So we need to see more of Kalia Davis. Not a lot, 5 to 7 snaps, a couple more extra opportunities. Robert Beal Jr. Beal Jr. has been somebody that's been getting a little bit more playing time as the years progress. They've kind of ramped him up. And the 49ers are pretty loaded at defensive end now. There has been moments during the season where they were definitely weak at the position. They were thin. They didn't have enough guys. We know Bosa's so good. Leonard Floyd has been great. He's, continued to put up really good sack numbers. And then, Yetur Gross-Matos has definitely been a lot better since he came back from his injury. I don't think he was healthy for most of the season. And all those guys are going to be back next year. But the decisions are going to come from a couple other guys, a couple young guys. You got Sam Okuwanu, who was playing like his hair was on fire in the first 8 games of the season. That's kind of slowed down a little bit. It's not like he's taking a step back, but he's definitely not taking another step forward. And then you've got Robert Beal Jr., who the 49ers have as a 5th-round pick last season, who it's been a slow development process. And you can see that he's got the size, he's got the length, he's got the speed, but we haven't seen that speed translate to pass rush. But he plays the run really well. He's definitely been a great guy against the run, sets a good edge, is able to disengage and make tackles, long arms. So that part of it, Robert Beal Jr. has down. But that's where you get the contrast. Sam Okuwanu, not as good setting the edge in the run game, but is a lot better at getting to the quarterback than Robert Beal Jr. But 2 young players you have to evaluate. And why do I say that? Because next year, Drake Jackson seems like he'll be back. But the 49ers could also be drafting a defensive end in the draft, because when you're picking around 11 through 13, where the 49ers are kind of sitting right now, you're going to have a potential opportunity to land on either an offensive tackle you really want or a defensive playmaker on the defensive line, whether that's defensive end or interior defensive tackle. And if you could get a whole shot defensive end, that could make a decision on one of these guys for you. So evaluating Okuwanu and Robert Beal Jr. is going to be important over the next couple of weeks, because Leonard Floyd is dealing with a shoulder injury, so that should give some more opportunities. Just put Leonard Floyd out there for obvious pass downs. Let Gross-Matos play base sets. But as part of the rotation, I think the 49ers should play Nick Bosa and Yetur Gross-Matos less snaps, and play Sam Okuwanu and play Robert Beal Jr. more snaps over the next couple of weeks. It would be a good idea to get them some looks against a guy like Penei Sewell. So that way you can evaluate who these guys are. And you're not going into these games looking to play weaker. You're not looking to lose football games. That's not your intention. But evaluation is a key. And so a key 3rd down, maybe it's 3rd and long. Let's go put a Robert Beal out there and just say, hey, go get the quarterback. Speed rush. Don't worry about contact. Jared Goff is more stoic in the pocket. Go get after a stationary target and see what he can do. Then when you play Kyler Murray, go out there and be able to pass rush lane integrity, but get after Kyler Murray. So I think the 49ers can evaluate over the next couple weeks these guys that they're going to have there at defensive end. And I think it's going to be very important. Now, the last guy on the list that I really want to evaluate, and maybe I missed somebody, you guys could always leave it in the comment section if I missed somebody. I'd be happy to hear that. What about Jake Moody? We heard Kyle Shanahan give what seemed to be a vote of confidence for Jake Moody. And, I think that Moody's been very shaky, especially down the stretch, missing key field goals. He was pretty good before the ankle injury this season, but he definitely hasn't been consistent since. And the 49ers can't lose games in 2025 because of the kicker. So I expect the 49ers to evaluate Jake Moody pretty extensively over the next couple of weeks. I think that there's going to be some times when the 49ers normally would probably go for it, where maybe they give him an extra chance at a field goal, because they need to put the pressure on Jake Moody, and Jake Moody has to make some big kicks to be able to prove that he's the guy next year. Now, with that being said, I fully expect when the 49ers go into training camp in 2025 for them to carry 2 kickers on their active 90-man roster. I think that they're going to test Jake Moody, and they're going to put competition against him. His rookie season, it was Zane Gonzalez. And I think this year there's going to be somebody else that comes in that the 49ers put pressure on Jake Moody. And I don't think that they are afraid to move on from Moody either. I think that they would love for Moody to work out. They love how big the leg is, but the inconsistencies just can't happen. So I fully expect Jake Moody to be tested, and I expect him to get some opportunities. And if I'm Jake Moody, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. Number one, if they tell me to kick it out of the end zone on kickoffs, you better kick it out. It is time for him to handle business. So that's going to be very big for this 49ers football team, is evaluating these young players. Let me know what you think about the list. Do you want to see these guys out on the field more as well? I'm curious to hear what you have to say. But thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. 49ers Cutback on Believe Network. This episode was brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.